Welcome to the Ohio County Public Library Storytime Online. My name is Miss Jennifer.
I'm Miss Ellie.
And we're so excited that you've joined us. This is the second week of our B unit for Storytime. Last week, we just did some fun stories all about bugs. Do you remember that? We learned all about bugs. So we put our hand, we put our thumb on our nose, put the last two fingers down and the first two up, your pointer and your tall man, and then you kind of, their antennas, and they go, bugs, bugs. So today, though, we're going to get a little bit more specific for the next couple of weeks. Yeah, we bug danced too. It was so much fun. But for the next couple of weeks, we're going to kind of look at some specific types of insects. Remember, we talked a little bit about what makes something a bug and what makes something an insect. Today, we're going to be looking at the insect known as bees. Do you know anything about bees? Do you like bees? Let's take a look at the sign for bees first. So when we do the sign for bees, you're going to put your thumb and your pointer finger together, and you're going to touch your cheek, and then you're going to swat. So bees. Yep. I was watching a demo on how to do the sign, and the lady said if she did it, it would be bees. Oh! Do bees scare you? I know when I was growing up, I was really afraid of bees. Did you know that some people are even allergic to bees? But bees are a really important insect, and they're so important to our environment. So it'll be really neat to see some stories that kind of celebrate the bee and help us not to be so afraid of our little friend, the bee. But let's get ready to get our alligators out. Are you ready? A is for alligator, chomp, chomp, chomp. B is for bouncing, so we'll hop, hop, hop. C is for circle, so let's turn around. And D is for we all sit down. Crisscross applesauce. Ready to be a listener? We've got in some new books about bees. And this is a lovely one. The title is Bee. Now when you write the word bee for an insect, it's spelled B-E-E. So that spells bee. This is a peek through picture book. So see how it kind of has a hole in it? And the author of this book is Britta Teckentrup. Let's take a look at bees. Let me get my page opened up. Dawn is breaking on a brand new day, and in the meadow, poppies sway. A bee appears, striped black and gold. A wonder of nature is about to unfold. See the hole in the page? In the treetops, birds start to sing. The little bee beats her wings. As she travels here and there, a gentle humming fills the air. Back and forth, to and fro, bee knows exactly where to go. Visiting flowers of every hue, she has a special job to do. Gathering nectar as she goes from every foxglove and every rose. Dusty with pollen, the little bee buzzes, buzzes busily. Bee travels on from bloom to bloom, drawn in by their sweet perfume. Harvesting flowers one by one, her compass is the midday sun. That's how she knows what direction to go. Among the orchard's apple trees, blossoms quiver in the breeze. Carrying pollen from place to place, bee always leaves a tiny trace. So a little bit of pollen goes from place to place with a bee. Flowers as far as the eye can see. Too many flowers for just one bee. All of a sudden, bee is gone. She has a message to pass on. Back at the hive, bee spreads the news. There's work to be done, no time to lose. Listen for their gentle humming. The word is out, the bees are coming. Did you know bees do a little dance to communicate to one another where the flowers are? So here they go, buzzing over the dense high hedgerows, past the pond where wild thyme grows. Through the orchard's sweet-smelling scent, the bees travel on with calm intent. As lilies grow orange in the sun, the bees must finish what they've begun, stopping at every flower they find, leaving the gift of pollen behind. The bees pass over a woodland stream, droplets sparkle and pebbles gleam, water trickles, bubbles and weaves, a weeping willow trails its leaves. So many beautiful plants in nature. As the bees fly on through buds and burrs, a tiny miracle occurs. So many plants and flowers you see were given life by one small bee. The end. Isn't that a lovely, lovely story? Did you know that that pollen that bees spread is a really important part of making new plants? And so bees are very, very important. This is a sweet story about a little bee whose name is Buzzy the Bee. And Buzzy the Bee was a hard-working bee. He loved to just buzz around all day long. And when he would buzz around, he would sing a little song. He would sing, "I'm a buzzy little bee, I'm buzzy as can be. I buzz to the flowers, 1, 2, 3." Well, Buzzy the Bee loved to buzz around, whether it was sunny days or cloudy days, windy days or still days. He loved to buzz all around. But he did not like to buzz on rainy days. On rainy days, Buzzy the Bee liked to stay in his hive where it was nice and dry. But one spring, it rained and rained and rained. And so Buzzy the Bee was in his hive for days and days and days. Well, on the 5th day, Buzzy the Bee said, "Buzz, I'm tired of staying inside. I'm going to go buzz in the rain." And so he left the hive. Now, Buzzy the Bee had never buzzed around in the rain, but he left that hive singing his song, "I'm a buzzy little bee, I'm as busy as can be. I buzz to the flowers, 1, 2, 3." So Buzzy the Bee headed over to the garden. And he buzzed and he buzzed, and when he got to the garden, he was surprised to see that the flowers, all of their petals were closed up, and the flowers were sleeping in the rain. Wake up," he said. But the flowers did not wake up. And so Buzzy thought, well, I guess I'll just go see what else there is to see in the spring besides flowers. And so Buzzy the Bee happened to look down in the garden, and he saw a little snail. And the snail said, "I love it when it rains. It's my favorite type of weather. When it rains, I love to crawl under wet leaves and find lots of delicious food to eat." "Not me," said Buzzy. "I want it to stop raining so that the flowers will wake up, because I'm a buzzy little bee, I'm as busy as can be, and I buzz to the flowers, 1, 2, 3. And so Buzzy the Bee went exploring a little bit more, and he flew towards the pond. And when he got to the pond, he saw a frog sitting by the edge of the water. And he heard the frog saying, "I love it when it rains. It's my favorite kind of weather. I love to get wet and hop in the mud." "Well, not me," said Buzzy. I want it to stop, because I want the flowers to wake up. Because I'm a buzzy little bee, I'm as busy as can be, and I buzz to the flowers, 1, 2, 3. So Buzzy the Bee went exploring a little bit more, and he flew out to the middle of the pond, and there he saw a duck. And he heard the duck say, "I love it when it rains. It's my favorite kind of weather. I I love to swim in the water and feel the rain running down my feathers." "Not me," said Buzzy. "I want it to stop raining so that the flowers will wake up, because I'm a buzzy little bee. I'm as busy as can be, and I buzz to the flowers. 1, 2, 3. Well, just then Buzzy felt something warm on his back, and he looked up and he saw that the clouds were starting to part. And he was so excited, and he said, "I love it when the sun comes out, because it is my favorite kind of weather." And Buzzy the bee went flying back to check out the flowers, and when he got there, sure enough, the flowers were all beginning to open up, and Buzzy the bee was as happy as can be. The end. Thanks so much for sharing that story with me. Miss Ellie has a fun story about a bear and some bees.
I do.
Tell you what, let me go ahead and grab this off here for you, Miss Ellie, so it's not in your way. Oh, here we go.
All right. It's called Please, Please the Bees by Gerald Kelly. Benedict was a creature of habit. He liked to do everything the same every day. Every morning he woke up at the same time. Every morning he stretched, he scratched, and he yawned. A great big yawn. Every morning the bees delivered 3 jars full of honey. Benedict ate the same breakfast he'd eaten since he was just a fuzzy little cub. Toast with honey and tea with extra honey. Next came his daily routine, practicing, perfecting his honey cake recipe, knitting, and running errands. At night, he'd read and have one last cup of honey tea before bed. Life was sweet. Until one morning. One morning, things weren't the same. In fact, something terribly insane had happened. On strike. There's no more honey. The bees had gone on strike. Oh no. Benedict's breakfast wasn't the same without honey. Without his honey tea, he couldn't knit. Practice was dreadful, and he didn't even bother with his errands. Benedict became deeply discouraged. Just then, he heard someone say, "Hey you in the fur coat." Just a very small bee with a remarkable loud voice. "We need to talk," said the bee. "Talk? Grumbled Benedict. "I'll let you all live in my yard, and all I ask is a few jars of honey. You should be grateful, not go on strike." "A few jars," said the bee. "Buddy, we delivered these jars of honey to you every day, every month, every year. Do the math, Einstein." "The hive is a wreck," the bee continued. "All we do is keep the walls from falling in, the roof leaks, the wind blows through the cracks, and the last 3 queens gave up and quit on us because the lousy working conditions." The bee showed Benedict the garden. "Look," said the bee, "the weeds everywhere. We have to fly miles to get to the closest flower just to make our honey." So we voted to go on strike. "You're taking us for granted," the bee declared. "You want honey? Things need to change. It's up to you, Bear." And with that, the very small bee just flew off. The thought of losing his honey sent a chill down Benedict's spine. He had a lot to think about. "Maybe I've been too selfish," the Benedict said to himself. "I never thought about what the bees might need, but how am I going to make this right?" So Benedict did some research. He did a little shopping. What do you think he's going to do? He did a lot of work. Look, he's clipping the weeds and planting some more flowers. He's even mowing. He's planting some flower seed. Benedict even learned how to harvest the honey. I suppose it's a bit rude for them to expect them to do it all by himself, he thought. Finally, he was ready to show the bees all the work he'd done. What would they think? He held his breath as they waited. And then he heard the remarkable loud voice of a very small bee. "Drop the signs, girls. Time to get back to work." 3 days, Benedict is still a creature of habit. He had his daily routine, but he doesn't take the honey for granted anymore. He knows his life is just sweet. But now it seems even sweeter for everyone. The next story I'm going to tell you guys is about 6 bees. 6 buzzing bumblebees flying around the hive. One buzzes off, and that leaves how many on the board? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good job. 5 buzzing bumblebees flying near the door. One buzzes off, and that leaves, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Good job. 4 buzzing bumblebees. Woo. One flew off too early. So 4 buzzing bumblebees flying around a tree. This one buzzed off again and left us with 3. Good job. 3 buzzing bumblebees flying in the sky so blue. One buzzes off, and that leaves, do you know how many left? 1. We just got 2 more bumblebees left. 2 buzzing bumblebees flying in the sun. One buzzes off, and that leaves just 1. One lonely bumblebee flying, looking for some fun. He flies off, and then there were none. Good job, guys, counting with me.
Let's get ready to freeze dance. When I think of bees, do you know that one of the things you're not supposed to do if you see a bee is to swat and go crazy and run around? One of the things you're supposed to do is just stay real still. So let's do a freeze dance. Let's do a bee freeze dance. So we're gonna rock and roll freeze dance. You know, whenever you can move all around, and when the music stops, you're gonna freeze and not move. Okay, just like if you saw a bee. Let's get ready to freeze dance.
Jumping around with the rock and roll music, dancing any way you please, swinging and swaying as the band keeps playing. When the music stops, we freeze, twisting and turning like a twirling top. And when we hear a pause, we stop, just moving along with a good old-fashioned rock and roll song. Singing dance to the music, leaving our troubles and worries behind. Singing dance to the music, all we want to do is have a good time.
Listen. Here we go. Freeze. There's a bee.
We're doing it together, my friends and I. So happy, and I'll tell you why. We're moving along with a good old-fashioned rock and roll song.
Let's get ready to do some activities all about bees. Let's do some STEM activities. One of the things that we've done before, we've done some math skill building. This was just like a little reproducible sheet that I found online. It actually is at jdaniel4'smom.com, jdaniels4.com. Anyway, one of the things that you can do when you have a piece of paper like this, I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can take your piece of paper and slide it inside a page protector, and it kind of becomes a dry erase board. So you can take dry erase markers, and this allows your child to work and erase and work again. So you might, this is a sheet where you're doing some adding, so your preschooler can work on writing their numbers. Let's do 5 plus 2. So now you can kind of create some manipulatives. Look around your house maybe for some things that are yellow, maybe some pom-poms, some Lego pieces. I even created some little bee with some with yellow and black Legos. And then do some counting with manipulatives. This is a great way for your preschooler to learn adding. So we're going to count out 5 bees coming out of the hive, and then I'm going to count 2 on this side, and then I would see how many there are all together. So have your preschooler count, and then see if they can write the number 7. What does a 7 look like? So using those little page protectors is a great way to kind of create a dry erase board. Like I said, you can just take a paper towel, and if you're using a dry erase marker, it wipes right off. So you've got something that you can use again and again. I mentioned a few minutes ago about how bees in my story, an important part of the story was about how bees help bring pollen from one flower to the next. So this is a fun activity that you could do. I've created a little bee finger puppet. You could even just take a pipe cleaner and wrap it around their finger to maybe make some little feet. I'm gonna stick mine through there. And then if I've made a flower, now you could use Cheetos or something that has a yellow dust Doritos that's gonna get off on their fingers. I've just used some kind of dark spices. I've got some mustard or some chili powder. What a bee does is when a bee visits a flower and they're getting nectar out of the flower, of course they land with their feet and their wings get on that flower and into the pollen, so that then they have it on their legs and on their feet, so that when they go to another flower and they walk around on that flower, they've left some of the pollen on the second flower. And that's part of, and a very important part of how flowers reproduce and make more flowers and more seeds. As you're exploring how bees interact with flowers, another thing that bees do is, of course, they gather nectar from flowers. So I've got like a little egg carton here. I've made a little cup. I've made a flower out of a cup, and I put some yellow water to look like nectar. So again, a great opportunity for your preschooler to use their pincher grasp, to use like a little eyedropper, and maybe see if they can fill the beehive with nectar. And I tell you what, using pipettes and eyedroppers, most preschoolers love this activity, and it's something that will keep them busy for an hour, just sucking up a liquid into a pipette. But you can pretend like they're sucking up nectar from a flower and taking it to the hive to make honey. And one of our favorite activities to do here at the library, whenever we have groups, and we've used this during the summer reading, is to make a bee hummer. Did you know that bees don't actually hum with their mouths? What's happening is you're hearing the motion of their wings. When things vibrate, they make a sound. And so this is a bee hummer. Can you hear the bee humming? So I want to show you how to make a bee hummer. All that you're going to need is see if I can get that off. You're going to need a little piece of an index card or some cardstock cut 3 1/4 by 3 inches. Then you're going to take a popsicle stick and you want to glue the card onto the middle of the popsicle stick. All right. Then you're going to, let me just kind of take this one apart. You're going to need 2 erasers, one on either end. So I've glued on my piece of paper. I've kind of decorated mine onto my popsicle stick. I've put 2 cap erasers on either side, and then tie a piece of string about 1 foot to 2 foot long. So this is just regular old string. Okay. Then what you're going to need is you're going to need a large rubber band. And I'm going to take that rubber band and I'm going to have it go on top of the cap erasers, okay? So that it rests on the top of the cap erasers from side to side, okay? Now you just take your string and you're going to spin it around. Now you do want to make sure that your preschoolers are clear of other people as they spin their bee hummer. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to teach how sound is caused by vibrations and how bees make their buzzing sound because of the vibration of their wings. Well, I wanted to share one more story with you all about bees. Now, I did this story whenever we went down on the farm. You might remember this story. This is the story of Paul and the cows. You see, Paul's job for his family's farm was to make sure that the cows got to the barn at the end of the day. And so one day, Paul went out into the pasture, and he started shooing those cows. Shoo, cows, shoo! Go to the barn! Go to the barn! You need to get to the barn! And he just was swinging his arms and hollering at the cows, but the cows would not go to the barn. And Paul was so upset that he came and he sat down in the grass and he started to cry. Oh, what will I do? When along came Paul's dog. And the dog said, Paul, why are you crying? And Paul said, well, I'm crying because the cows won't go to the barn. Well, I'll help, said the dog. And so the little dog ran out into the pasture and he started barking at those cows. And he'd chase them around. But the cows would not go to the barn. And so Paul's dog came and sat down next to Paul, and he started to cry. Well, pretty soon along came the cat. And the cat said, Dog, why are you crying? Well, I'm crying because Paul's crying because the cows won't go to the barn. Well, I'll help, said the cat. And so the cat went out into the pasture, and she meowed, and she purred, and she rubbed up against the cows, and she said, Cows, would you pretty please go to the barn? But the cows would not go to the barn. And so the cat came, and she sat down next to the dog, and she started to cry. Well, pretty soon along came Duck. And Duck said, Cat, why are you crying? Well, I'm crying because the dog's crying, because Paul's crying, because the cows won't go to the barn. Well, I'll help, said the duck. And so Duck went out into the pasture, and Duck went and started flapping her wings. And started flapping her wings and quacking real loud. But the cows would not go to the barn. And so Duck went back and she sat down and she started to cry. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Well, pretty soon along came Bee. And Bee said, Duck, why are you crying? Well, I'm crying because the cat's crying, because the dog's crying, because Paul's crying, because the cows won't go to the barn. Well, I'll help, said the bee. And so the bee went out into the pasture, and he buzzed around, and he buzzed around, and he landed on one of the cows, and he stuck it. Moo, said the cow. And the cow started running for the barn. Well, when this cow saw that cow running for the barn, he started to run for the barn too. And so the cows got to the barn, and Bee was the hero of the day. The end. One of my favorite stories. When we have groups come to the library in the spring, this is one of my favorite stories to tell them. You know, we also have a little finger play that we like to do, especially with the babies and some of our young ones. You might know this. We're going to make a little beehive with our hand and kind of put it as a fist on top of your other hand. And it goes, here is the beehive, but where are the bees? They're hidden inside where nobody sees. Watch as they come out of the hive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're alive! Ah! And you can kind of go and tickle somebody with your fingers. Can you do that one again with us? So we're going to make a beehive with our fists. Here is the beehive, but where are the bees? They're hidden inside where nobody sees. Watch as they come out of the hive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're alive! Well, I hope you had fun learning about bees today. Next week, we'll learn about butterflies. That's another very beautiful and important animal to our environment. Well, let's get ready for our hands to give thanks. Our hands give thanks with a clap, clap, clap. Our feet give thanks with a tap, tap, tap. Clap, 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 tap, tap, tap. We roll them together and we wave goodbye. See you next week.